Welcome to Revolutionary Motion, where we show you tennis from a different perspective.
Today we'll explain to you the different types of forehand grips out there and their biggest advantages and disadvantages to help you make a decision which grip is the perfect fit for you. Now let's start with the semi-Western grip. This is probably the grip that most of the players use nowadays on the ATP Tour, and it really helps you to find a middle ground out of the Western and Eastern grip, which then gives you a good amount of topspin, a good amount of forward force in your shots, and a lot of control. So that's why most players opt for this kind of grip. Now, in order to make it a little bit easier to understand, I will tell you the benefits and the disadvantages of all of the grips if you move your racket in your hand in a different direction. So now, going from the semi-Western grip, if you make your grip more Eastern or more towards the Continental grip, the more you move your racket in that direction in your hand, the less you will be able to use topspin very easily, and the more power you will add to your shots, because your racket will be facing more forward when your wrist is in a neutral position. Now, one of the biggest disadvantages, the more you move your racket towards an Eastern or Continental grip, the more your wrist will be at an awkward position if you're trying to add a lot of topspin. So if we're watching it from the side, we can see that in a semi-Western grip, your wrist will be very comfortable when making contact with the ball. The more I push my wrist into an Eastern or Continental grip even, if I try to keep the same contact point, you can see that it's a lot more uncomfortable on my wrist. So as much as I want to give it more spin, my wrist keeps me from adding that top spin to my shots. Now the same thing goes for the other direction. If you're moving your racket from the semi-Western grip more towards a Western grip, it now makes it a lot simpler to add more topspin, but because of that, it makes it a lot harder to add more forward power, and I'll show you why. If you now hold your grip in a Western grip, okay, this is what I use on my forehands, which is pretty extreme, it's very easy to point your racket downwards, and it makes it more challenging to keep your racket pointing straight forward. And you can see that if I want to hit the ball like this to keep the most forward power possible, it's a very awkward motion. So that's why usually people with a semi-Western grip give it a huge amount of topspin, because it's more natural to keep your racket closed and swing up on the ball. So now those are the main differences between the Western and the Continental or Eastern grip, depending on how far you want to go in that direction. So how do you now make your decision as to what kind of grip you should be using? Very simple. You look at the type of game style that you're trying to play. If you're first starting out with tennis, you want to make sure that you get an idea of how much topspin do you want in your shots and how much power do you want in your shots. Because as we all know, the more topspin you give a ball, the less forward power you can produce, because more of your total strength goes towards the topspin. The same thing goes the other way around. If you want to hit it really hard, it will be difficult to add any topspin at all, and the ball will end up very flat, which makes it tougher to control, but it will be faster after the bounce. So now, once you figure out how much topspin you want to use, if you feel like I want to use a super heavy topspin like Nadal or even more topspin, you should probably opt for a more Western grip between the semi-Western and the Western grip. If you're trying to hit the ball really hard and very clean, and you feel like you're a player that hits all the contact points very clean in general because you're a very technical person, a more Eastern grip might be the way to go for you, but know that it becomes a lot more difficult to deal with balls that are not in the ideal contact point as soon as you have an Eastern grip, especially if the balls get higher up, because in those moments you have to close your racket a little bit more on top of the ball so you don't hit it out, and that's, as we mentioned before, very difficult with an Eastern or Continental grip, but very simple with a Western grip. Now the same thing goes the other way around. If the ball is off of the contact point but very, very low, so you have to hit the ball when it's right above the ground, it becomes a lot more challenging with a Western grip and a lot easier with an Eastern grip or a semi-Western grip. And that's due to the fact that it's very difficult with a Western grip to get under the ball, because you can't really spin up on the ball. So mostly you will see a shot that's more like a bowling shot, going around the ball, and that's what this banana forehand that you see from Nadal comes from, but that's a very challenging shot to learn. So usually people with a Western grip struggle more with lower balls. People with an Eastern grip or Continental grip struggle more with heavy topspin that bounces up a lot higher than where they are comfortable. So knowing all these things, try to find your middle ground. Try to find the grip that works best for your game style and works best for the kinds of shots that you are trying to produce. So if I had to make a recommendation for you guys, try to stay away from extreme Western grips as well as Continental or very Eastern grips for the start, because it's very challenging to deal with those grips when you're first starting out with tennis. And it's a lot easier to find a middle ground and really figure out how much topspin or power you want to give your shots if you're more in a semi-Western grip or around that semi-Western grip with slight deviations.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.